Hello and welcome to another episode of Our Own Devices. This time we're going to talk about something which has been I call it the keyword or the buzzword, which I've heard for the most number of years that I've been writing on technology. You know, uh, I guess around 2006, 2007, we started getting emails talking about cloud as being the next big thing. And it's always been the next big thing. But, it's now such an integral part of our lives that we don't even realize how important it is to almost everything that we do when it comes to technology. So this time to talk about the future of cloud, how cloud is evolving, we have with us Narsimha Rao Mannepalli, who is the Executive Vice President and Head of Cloud Infrastructure and Security Solutions at Infosys. Uh, so welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nandagopal, and you can call me Nari. That's what everybody calls me. So Nari is what I go by.
Yeah. So if I can start by asking a very generic question for our audience, Nari. So how are we placed when it comes to the entire environment of the cloud, right? Because again, we had many years where we were talking about cloud coming. Now cloud is such an integral part of everything we do. And what is the future?
And absolutely, Nandagopal. First is thanks for having me on this program and asking me to speak about a topic I love to talk about, which is cloud. Now, to answer your question, I think you're right. Cloud as a technology has been in existence for probably more than a decade now, and it's been coming for a long time. But I think the inflection point was about 5 years back where the adoption started increasing. But that the COVID thing completely changed the pace of adoption. And today, I think cloud is everywhere, like you said. And traditionally, cloud started off as a cost play infrastructure. How can you save on infrastructure costs by sharing the workloads and virtualizing workloads? But what we have learned over the last 3, 4, 5 years is today increasingly digital transformation and cloud transformation have become synonymous. And during COVID, digital was the only way any business or even individuals could actually live their lives. In fact, sometimes I wonder if we did not have the power of technology, the world would have been in a much worse position during the pandemic. And thanks to these technologies, and cloud was one of the biggest one which was there, which helped us get products, services. People went on to do their lives while still being locked up in their homes for an extended period. For the most part, of course, there was disruption, but I think the disruption would have been much more without the availability of technology. So cloud has really moved into the homes, businesses completely. And fundamentally, it is used for 2, 3 things. Very easily, it is enabled, it is used to provide the customer an experience. When enterprise is dealing with customers, how do you amplify the experience, especially in this whole shutdowns and lockdowns? Cloud was the biggest way the customer was provided with experience. Likewise, for employees to be productive and service their customers, cloud was a huge enabler. So employee experience and client experience was a big enabler. Collaboration was a big part of it. During pandemic, again, a lot of people had to come together in spite of the restrictions. There again, cloud was used in a big way. So cloud was used for many things. It was used to deliver products and services. It was used to improve experience for every stakeholder. It was used for collaboration and in many ways. Now, as we look ahead, it is also undergoing its own transformation. I think some basic needs have been met. Today, people know how to freely collaborate using the power of technology and cloud, which is a big part of it. But for the most part, the thing about digital is no longer a question in any business. Digital transformation, providing a digital front end, is seen as a default for almost all businesses today. But when they look ahead, I think today the power of cloud is seen more, how do I introduce new products and services in an accelerated manner? There, I think cloud and the larger digital technologies are helping in a big way. Second is, how do I again accelerate innovation? Because for everybody to stay relevant to their customers, I think a rapid pace of innovation is important. And there again, cloud is helping in a big way. Last but not the least, I think over again the last 3, 4 years, the imperatives to be a leader on ESG front is very, very important for all established enterprises. And there again, we see that cloud is helping in a big way. So to me, innovation, new products and services, ESG imperatives are 3 big areas cloud is helping. Of course, while continuing to look at how to strengthen the customer experience and the employee experience. Broadly, that's what I would look at how cloud is evolving.
Is scalability also a big thing? Because often when we talk to people, we hear that cloud also gives you the enormous power of scalability, which you could not have thought of, in a completely analog kind of a environment where you literally had to add servers. But I also heard a lot of interesting use cases during the pandemic where scale down also happened. Otherwise, you would have spent so much money for maybe a couple of years on things you were not using. And companies who had already moved to the cloud could easily scale down to maybe 10% of what they were doing, because of this thing, and saved on cost and maybe saved a lot of jobs in that process.
No, absolutely. I think you brought me to a very interesting viewpoint, which I wanted to share. So if you looked at the evolution of technologies and all of this IT industry over the last 3-4 decades, for the most part, technology was seen as a value adder. Technology was adding value to a context, adding value to business, and people brought in scale. You just look at the outsourcing industry, which I am part of, right? The technology enabled services and products to be delivered from anywhere in the world. And the IT industry of which I'm part of, then went on to bring in the scalability aspect of having thousands and hundreds of thousands of people getting trained, enabled, and providing those services. So technology was the value adder, and people were adding scalability to the mix. But now we've come to a situation where it has been reversed. Now technology is providing scalability, and people have to add value. I think that's what the time we are coming. So you look at, for example, everybody talks about the power of AI, right? Everybody talks about how do we use AI in the current context? How do we get data-based insights into business? It's only possible because of this power of the scalability of storing large amounts of data, as well as having access to large amounts of compute manpower, which you can scale up and down. When you have both these, you can use the full data to get insights, which the line managers can use to make more meaningful decisions. Just look at a classic example, right? I'm sure all of us get these random calls from people selling credit cards and people selling housing loans and all of that. In most cases, they're just random cold calling. There is no data insight onto it. So many times I wonder, assuming I have an account with ICICI, I get calls from ICICI representatives asking me, saying, do you want to take a credit card? And they have no idea I already have 3 cards from them. Right? It's true for just about every bank. So we will move into a situation where enterprises will use the data they have, the telecom companies, the banks, the retailers, they know what the consumer is buying. And accordingly, they can do targeted products and services. And that is where the power of people will be used going forward. There is this popular notion, would AI going to make people redundant? But in our view and in my view, I think AI is going to move the problem to a different place. The scalability is what AI and cloud will address, but the value will come from people. You will have insights, but no insight is going to be 100% foolproof. It will be probabilistically what makes sense in a situation. But it's the human being who has to decide what makes sense in a given context. And that is where I think the biggest value is. But it goes back to where you started. Cloud brings enormous scalability to the whole thing. And today everybody is talking about AI or even ChatGPT for that matter. It is nothing but they're leveraging the full power of what's available today in terms of massive amounts of data and massive amounts of computing, and you can bring both together to get meaningful insights.
You also have the concept of multi-cloud. Like, how does that play out? Like, every company literally has multi-cloud now in a way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nandagopal, I think there it's all about, today it's no longer about, cloud is not a fancy anymore. Cloud is what are you adopting the cloud for? And just about every enterprise has adopted a cloud. But the key question also is people are moving away from cloud to right cloud. What is the right cloud for me? And it is not one answer for every situation. Even within one enterprise, for different needs, you realize that the right cloud is not the same thing. It is not there's no one monolith cloud, which is right for you in all contexts. You may realize that for your data and insights need, you might want to work with a particular cloud provider. For your shop floor needs and real-time production, you might work with a private cloud, right? For providing employee experience and collaboration, you might choose a third cloud. And that is where I think perforce almost every enterprise is looking at multi-clouds being available to them, because in this notion of wanting to get the right cloud solution for themselves. And as we look ahead, I think cloud is no longer one plain vanilla technology. each of these cloud providers are coming up with specific solutions for a particular business problem, for an industry domain, or for a geography. That is how also you will realize that not everybody is offering the same solutions. So for a business, you might realize that for a particular problem, I might need A cloud, and for a different problem, I need B cloud. So, and we think, and we've always been actually talking about how hybrid cloud is the way forward. Enterprises will need to work with multiple cloud providers, including what we call private cloud. There are applications, business reasons why you want to create your own private cloud to get a good response, to also take care of your data secrecy reasons, and also it's also sometimes economical to do it. So there is a good reason why enterprises will adopt multiple clouds, and we think the way forward is, of course, a hybrid cloud, and that's what we are seeing the movement to. Almost, there are probably very negligible people who will be on the either end of the spectrum, fully private or fully public with just one public cloud provider.
Yeah.
Most of them would be with multiple people.
Is that also a challenge when you have multiple platforms that a single company is using, that and maybe they're not, these clouds are not able to talk to each other, and is that something that you have to manage?
No, absolutely. I think I wouldn't call it a problem. That is a necessity in business today, that enterprises have to operate in multiple clouds, and that is where system integrators, consulting companies like ours have a role to play. How do we bring all of this together in a seamless manner? So Infosys, as you know, has the Infosys Cobalt offering, which is integrated end-to-end cloud solution set for our customers. And as part of that, we have what is called the Infosys Polycloud platform, whose entire premise is that there are multiple clouds operating. How do you bring it seamlessly in front of the customer? We clearly do not envisage that each customer figure out his own way to manage each of these and spend time and money and resources in trying to do it himself. We think players like us can bring in a certain level of abstraction, where the end user is not subjected to what is the underlying architecture or underlying complications, whether it's a security policy, whether it's a metering policy, whether it is the storage and archival process policy. All of that we abstract and we bring it together through this platform, and it is transparent to the end user. That's where system integrators and consulting companies have a role to play. How do you bring all of this together? And I think we've been fairly successful with this model. This Polycloud platform is deployed in many customers, and we think that's the way forward.
So are companies thinking like on basis of the cloud now, when they're thinking of a new product or a project, is it built cloud up in a way? I know it's a very weird thing to say, but is that sort of built into the design of the infrastructure? That and it's very, I guess it's very different thinking from what you would have had maybe a decade back. Like how would you scale up? How would you build all of this in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think typically most enterprises call it cloud first kind of strategy, right? Yeah. Where if we have a problem to solve, you always ask yourself, can cloud solve it? And I go and solve it to cloud. And the people who are providing the solution have to really answer the question, why not cloud if they're not going with cloud? So you almost make it a default option, and you have to justify if you don't go to the cloud. So cloud first is an approach which obviously most enterprises are adopting. I think in fact, of late we're also hearing more and more companies looking at, can it be AI first also? Cloud first, AI first, can I go there? So one underlying thing, Nandagopal, in all of this is, I think one reason why it is also happening is initial years there were fears about security and privacy with public cloud networks. And I think the cloud providers and the technology players have addressed the security concerns amply and very adequately over the years, maybe 3 years back or whatever. So once those concerns are addressed, today we are in a context where actually I think there is a case to say the security and privacy is probably better provided on a public cloud platform than otherwise. Then a private cloud, then maybe your own hosted environment, which is not cloud. So I think even the security concerns are very well addressed. There is most regulators accept it easily. It's no longer a question mark for regulators when they look at cloud solution. There are very clear guidelines on data privacy, data secrecy, the access rights, all of that. So cloud first is definitely a strategy which many enterprises are looking at today.
Is there scope for more awareness about what cloud can do for you? Like, do you still have those conversations, sort of, evangelizing with companies that, hey, there's a lot of opportunity out here, and the different kinds of formulations you can have around cloud? Is that a conversation that or are we past that point now?
No, I think, again, a great question, Nandagopal. I think it is no longer about explaining what cloud is to people. I think everybody understands what cloud is, and the pandemic helped us in a big way. But today, we are also going to a stage, it is no longer about having access to technology. Are you accessing it the right way? Are you effective in implementing this technology? In fact, Infosys most recently released the Infosys Digital Radar, which is a survey of almost 2,700 respondents across the globe. And there we really look for insights on how to make the digital transformation, cloud transformation more effective. And we found two or three big things, which I think organizations need to do. And none of these are technology related stuff. The first and foremost is we think that organizations need to focus on the culture, which is surprising. Culture, people have spoken about even pre-Windows or MS-DOS days, culture was an important thing. But it's very interesting that culture becomes important again if organizations are looking at how best to reap or benefit from your digital investments. And the reason is very simple. The full power of cloud or any data-enabled insights or AI is only if you enable a certain culture of risk-taking, data-backed risk-taking in organizations. And we realize that most often it is easy to say, but very difficult to do in established enterprises. How do you enable your workforce to take risks? And how do you reward people to take risk, or how do you incentivize that mechanism? And equally, it is not encouraging risk. Do you also have a culture of enabling and providing them real-time data, live data as we call, so that they're empowered to take those choices? When we say encourage a culture of risk-taking, it is not blind betting, it's not gambling. It's about, based on real-time data insights, can you make the right calls on the ground? Today's world, where it is 7 by 24, every second is important. We believe the decisions have to be taken on the ground, on the field, where it matters. So we have to enable those people at that level with the right data insights and a culture of risk-taking. And to enable all of this today's world, I think the culture of learning becomes also very, very important. This capability of workforce, capability of everybody, including leaders, managers, workforce, is extremely important if any of these have to be successful. So how do you again build a culture of learning? How do you incentivize a culture of learning where everybody gives the required attention to it, and to make sure that collectively the organization capability is built for the current needs and, more importantly, the future needs? I mean, like I said, ChatGPT everybody talks about, but how quickly can organizations decipher how it can be put to use in business? How quickly can you enable and train your entire workforce? And sometimes it is not just your workforce, your partner ecosystem, your associates, extended network, all of that. Because all of us work in a very networked ecosystem. There is no place for any one guy to be super efficient and everybody else to be not as efficient. As the saying goes, the ultimate productivity is a function of the weakest link in the chain. So we have to make sure that the chain is strengthened completely. So this culture becomes very, very important. So that's one thing we again talk to customers while you look at implementing digital transformations. Today, technologies are available. But importantly, are you asking, what are you doing it for? Are you doing it the right way? And I think that's been our realization, and we continue to talk to clients about it.
Interesting thing that you pointed about culture. Like, so do companies that adopt the cloud also have a very positive rub off, when it comes to culture? Because suddenly you are empowering, as you said, your employees to be more innovative, to think out of the box, because literally anything is a plug and play once you are on the cloud, right? Like, you don't have to have in so much of investment going into maybe even try out something new, which would have maybe prevented a lot of people, from even thinking on certain lines earlier. Because suddenly you have scalability, you have flexibility. So are you seeing, because you're working with so many companies across the world?
It is what you said, Nandagopal, is very intuitive, right? It should happen that way. But what we realize is established enterprises are not so easy to change.
Yes.
Established practices, processes, it's mindset thing. There's what we call the muscle memory. It doesn't change easily unless you bring in interventions to address that issue. This culture of risk taking, for example, I talked about the culture of empowerment.
So cultural baggage is also there in a way.
And rightfully so. All of us, for all of us, change is something which, unless you are conscious about it, unless you put effort on it, unless you incentivize it, it's not going to happen by default. So even this culture of empowerment, culture of providing the right insights to people, leveraging the technology you have, it is not a default. Not everybody who implements cloud, it happens automatically. Absolutely not. In fact, our study says that It is not a default that by automatically everybody implements cloud is an empowered organization. In fact, it's the contrary. Organizations have to be very thought through on this, methodical on this, and really focus on how to make this happen. And I think that is the key. Even simple thing like everybody talks about data, and we've heard this data is the new oil, and which it is. But the key question today is, even now, the quality of data is a big concern. How do you make sure that the quality of data is something on which you can act? Otherwise, our familiar adage, it's garbage in and garbage out. If you have poor quality of data, then your insights are poor, and your managers and frontline executives are taking the wrong decisions with the most advanced technology. Let's understand, AI is also as good as the data you give it to. AI is also as good as the people are acting on it, end of the day. Even the best of AI technologies is again going to fail the point of data quality and the quality of the teams which operate it.
So, if I can conclude by asking you one last question, what do you think are the biggest opportunities in the cloud space right now, and maybe also the biggest challenges?
I think the opportunity is today the business world is changing dramatically. Newer business models are coming up every day. Every incumbent is challenged by sometimes existing incumbents, sometimes an upstart who nobody thought about. And the industry boundaries are blurring. Today, suddenly a bank is getting into distribution, a distribution company is getting into manufacturing, a manufacturing company is getting into credit cards. The boundaries are blurry. So newer business models are getting introduced. And if enterprises don't adopt, they're going to be irrelevant very quickly, right? So there is opportunity if you look at it that way. Today, there is ample technologies available for enterprises to differentiate themselves and win in the market. Equally, if you don't do it, you die also faster. So the half-life of every enterprise, every business is coming down. So is the half-life of every technology which is coming down. So there is an ample opportunity. Equally, there is significant threat if they don't adopt. And in all of this, I think the people part of it is very, very important. How do you bring in the people element? How do you also bring in the element of your ESG focus, your ESG imperatives? Because ultimately, all these enterprises, if they don't bring in the right priorities, technologies will only deliver what you prioritize on. So are using technology for the right purposes? I think all of these are the key questions. And last but not the least, I think while such rapid digitization is happening, such rapid cloud adoption is happening, the threat of security breaches, cyber breaches are only increasing every day. The good news is there are enough and more ways to protect yourself against it. Maybe not 100%, but 99% or 99.9% you can protect yourself. But the key is it is no longer an afterthought. Security has to be what we call secure by design, privacy by design, secure by design. I think enterprises have to think security even before they think about the next business transformation initiative. And they have to think about culture before they think about the next big digital transformation initiative. They should think about learning and capability before they embark on the next digital transformation initiative. So it's very exciting. There are a lot of opportunities. Equally, people have to think through, hopefully. Technology for the sake of technology has never worked and it will never work. So cloud is not a fancy technology to adopt. AI is not a fancy technology to go for. I think businesses and business leaders have to articulate what will they do with business and how will they make it work for them. I think that is the key.
Okay, thanks for this very insightful session. We say our podcasts are about understanding new things, getting new knowledge so that your mind opens up to the possibilities of what technology can do for you. So you were listening to Narsimha Rao Mannepalli of Infosys. Thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thank you, Nandagopal. It's a pleasure. And I have to go back to and listen to your podcast from today. I'm a big podcast listener. You will go into my listening list.
Yeah, we all became podcast listeners thanks to the pandemic.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Our pleasure. We'll be back again next week with another guest, a lot more insight. Till then, you can listen to our own devices everywhere you listen to your pods.